Okay, this is why I don't listen, believe. This is channel Histocrat, and he talks about, historical phenomena, usually mythological. And in this case, it's Spring Hill Jack, who was like a devil man, would be attacking people randomly in England. And of course, just like any other urban legend, after it got snowballed big enough, everyone was seeing this guy, right? Of course, women would claim that when he attacked them, he would sexually assault them. You know, everything comes down to sex with women. If I'm beginning to think if you erased a woman's gender, there'd be nothing left. But in any event, this would be the claims, right? More and more women would come out and say, I was attacked by Spring Hill Jack. So the police would have to take charge of this and see if they could catch this guy. And this is what the Histocrat and his compadre has to say about this. It's only a couple minutes long.
Employees might be depended upon to prevent annoyance. It appeared to him that the letter, which was written in a very beautiful hand, was the product of a lady who may have been terrified at the hands of the Lord Mayor. But as this terrible vision has not entered the city, he could not take recognizance of its iniquities. A gentleman present, stated for kneeling, told dreadful stories of the ghost or devil, who on one occasion was said to have beaten a blacksmith and torn his flesh with iron claws, and in others to tear the clothes from the backs of females. Not one of the injured people had been known to tell the story, perhaps they did not live to tell it. So the Lord Mayor believed that one of these 7 ladies who had lost their 7 senses was in fact his correspondent, and he hoped that she would do him the favour of a call, and he would have the opportunity of getting from her such a description of the demon as to enable to catch him in spite of the paid press and police. So, Crofty, do you pick up the kind of subtext of what's going on here?
Yes, again, we're seeing this idea that it is all being perpetrated by the aristocracy, as usually as a wager, to frighten the lower classes.
Yeah. So that's quite similar to what you reported before for the what was the gang called?
The Mohawk gang.
Yeah, the Mohawk gang. And what to me is kind of interesting, according to many of the sources I was consulting for this, they generally interpret this as the Lord Mayor. This is kind of like he's kind of mocking this. He's like saying, you know, he's kind of saying like, oh, these ladies who have lost their senses and all these victims, none of them have come forward. Perhaps they didn't live to tell the tale. This to some extent has been interpreted as the big city mayor making fun of the suburbs.
And also does echo a lot of comments that men would make at female accusers.
Yes, that's right. First of all, of course, you get the guy who mocks it. Of course, back then, obviously, a guy could afford to mock it because then it would fizzle out. Nothing bad would happen. Today, we can't afford to mock it. We can't afford to LMAO it because there's real damage been going on in the last 10 years from women who just make up stories and say, please do something about this. But this case, it's not a bugaboo like Spring Hill Jack. It's real men. And this is also why the idea of numbers doesn't matter. This is why whenever I challenge this stuff, someone would just come up with, well, so many women are saying it. They can't all be wrong. And this is proof that I'm right and you are wrong. Women make up stories all the time. And not only do they make up stories, they're willing to back each other in their false accusations. And men noticed this back here, like over 100 years ago. And so what makes you think that anything's changed? Human beings haven't evolved in the last century. Women en masse were willing to make up lies. What makes you think they're not going to do it now? Of course they are. And this is why I don't listen, believe. Before I end this, I just wanted to post, timestamp this. But the 58-minute mark, they of course talk about how men didn't get the vote till 1837, and that was land-owning men. The average guy didn't get that vote back then. I could do a separate video on that.
Daguerreotype photograph had been invented that year, so that's the first kind of reliable mass market photography. Charles Dickens was in the process of serializing his second novel, which was Oliver Twist. Later the next year, the People's Charter was issued to call for full male enfranchisement of the working class. This came off the heels of the Great Reform Act of 1832, which had expanded basically the vote to all male property owners, but had still not really expanded out to the working class.
That's right. And when the working class got it, they had to sign up for conscription. And the women got it just a few years later because they were resentful that the men got anything. And they didn't have to sign up for conscription. So the women just turned around when they demand stuff, and men just give it to them. So this is really a separate topic, but it was two birds with one stone in this video, or of the histocrats. I just want to mention it. But anyway, like I said, Spring Hill Jack here. The ladies, they made up stories, and of course, the guys noticed that women were like this. And again, they haven't changed an iota in the last 150 years, or in this case, I'd say 200 years. This 1837, we're not that far away from 2037, really. Okay, that ends this.